welcome to Dog Eared Thoughts. I'm Michael. I'm so glad you're here. We're jumping into lucky episode number 13, if you can believe it. So many more books to read and so little time. This week I'm going to be talking about books that are coming out in June and July, at least some books that have piqued my interest. Now, as any good reader who has a TBR stack sitting in their room somewhere, I will probably not be getting to these books in June and July, but they're coming out in June and July, and I'm just excited to talk about them a little bit. There's actually kind of my honorable mention for a book that's coming out in paperback in June that I missed somehow in a hardcover, so I'm excited to maybe catch it in paperback when it gets re-released there. But otherwise, really interesting stuff. Some nonfiction memoirs to fictional, some horror, a little kind of across the gambit a little bit here. So let's get ready to talk about them. Looking forward to it. So gonna jump into June, just kind of do these chronologically to some degree. And like I said, we're going to be across the board on a lot of these. So if any of one of these catches your eye or catches your ear and you're interested in it, or maybe you read an arc on it or love the author, love to hear about it. Put your thoughts in the comments, and let's talk about them. So the first one up is called The Beasts of the East. It's written by Andrew Moore. Comes out on June 2nd. And let me read the blurb here. So, before skyscrapers and smokestacks rose across the eastern United States, elk, bison, wolves, and cougars roamed. Typically imagined as icons of the West, these large mammals are in fact native to what was once a kind of Eden: towering forests in the Northeast, rich savannas of the Midwest, and the lush riverlands of Appalachia. Or Appalachia, I guess, depends on your pronunciation. After centuries of despoliation, all that remains of that Eden are faint traces of the historical record, and yet change is afoot. Moore follows the extraordinary efforts of scientists, advocates, and activists working to restore America's eastern wilderness. Such rewilding promises to restore balance to the eastern ecosystems and return one of the most biodiverse regions of the world to its former luster, but not without controversy. So I'm drawn to this one. First of all, I love reading or learning about what was what was the wilderness like before we came in and started developing things as humans, and that never ceases to amaze me. I drove through the Smokies and Blue Ridge a couple months ago on a trip that the family took, and I'm always in my mind as I'm driving through these mountains. Just imagining what was it like for people who had to find their way through these mountains when there wasn't roads or like paved roads. We hadn't blasted through mountains. You had to, the natives found ways to get across that. What animals lived there? How tall were these and lush were these forests and trees that were across the border? I think if anyone has kind of been to the Shenandoah Valley, how beautiful and lush all of that is. If you've walked or any part of the Appalachian Trail, there's all of these pieces to it that you get a sense of and a taste for. So I'm really excited just to understand and learn a little bit more about what was life like before humans, and obviously what's the ecosystem, and how does kind of not necessarily restoring balance or rewilding these, but what can we do to kind of reintroduce and kind of, especially with so much of the East Coast being so heavily populated, how does that balance, and how do we find that balance throughout that? So looking forward to learning a little bit more about that. The second one is called When the Revolution Comes, and it's by Chris Smalls. Comes out also on June 2nd, and it's a memoir, nonfiction as well. And the blurb on this one: When the Revolution Comes is a riveting inside story of how a young black man from Hackensack, New Jersey, with few or no resources, led a scrappy band of Staten Island warehouse workers in an improbable fight against Amazon, the second largest private employer in the United States, and won. This epic David and Goliath tale follows Smalls from childhood spent navigating his dad's stints in and out of prison, to his years of sacrifice and economic uncertainty as a father of three, to his ascension as the leader of a new generation's labor movement. A deeply personal and eye opening account of the creation of the Amazon Labor Union, When the Revolution Comes, offers both a searing expose of what it's like to be working class in America and inspiring evidence of what is possible when the overworked, underpaid, and disempowered join together. Look, I think when we talk about, so much has been made over the course of many decades of, how unions came to power and maybe lost that power, especially over the course of the last 30, 40 years. But I do feel like we are kind of at a tipping point, especially with workers trying to find their way, of finding their voice. And this is absolutely something that I'm excited to read. I bet the audio is probably equally as good to listen to. Really learn. I think Chris, as if you follow anything that he's done, he's also an incredible spokesperson for just rights of people, not just in this country, but across the globe. And having someone out there who can speak to that, who has lived it, I'm excited to kind of dig in and see what this says, because I think when you look at kind of a real world version of how so many of these dystopian novels come to pass, so much of this is where the workers and the people who unite come against that to kind of find their voice. And that's kind of a real world example of this. So absolutely looking forward to diving into that. All right, so jumping into staying in June, so coming out on June 16th, Kill All Wizards by Jedidiah Barry. And this one is definitely fiction, so let me read the blurb. We could think of nothing but the barbarian. He had come here surely to murder or marry someone, to exact revenge, or to say or do something very scandalous. We could hardly wait to see which it was. We hoped it would be all of them. The barbarian traveled far to consult with wizards of the Empire, and instead of lending their aid, they ensorcelled him, exploited his strength, and stole his sword. They should not have done that. Now the barbarian plans to kill every wizard who wronged him, even if that means blending in with their vile society, dressing in finery, taking tea in exclusive clubs, and reserving the best box at the theater. Oh, he hates all of that with a firing passion of his savage heart, but not as much as he hates these wizards. I think this one sounds like a very I won't call it a cozy fantasy, because it sounds like there's a bit of a significant revenge plot to this. But coming off of the last one, when you're talking about the workers being in workers' rights, now you have a barbarian who ends up being exploited for what he brings to the table, which is obviously his strength and skill with a sword, etc. And so now he's exacting revenge. But my understanding is that obviously this is probably has a mix of biting humor along with obviously a fish out of water story. It sounds like, potentially, as he's having to kind of blend in with society to reach his revenge. It's kind of an interesting retelling, I suppose, of or at least a bit of a telling mirror view of the Count of Monte Cristo. So I'm excited to kind of see how they take this, especially obviously with the kind of fantasy air to it. So looking forward to seeing where that goes. I think this one might be a little bit more serious than fun, but I think it's probably going to tread the line a little bit. I think there'll be parts where you don't expect to laugh, but you're laughing, which I would say is similar to Count of Monte Cristo. You're not sure you're going to find humor in there, but you really do. So looking forward to that. All right. Number 4, Nemesis Mine by Amy Archer. Comes out June 9th. So I didn't quite follow chronologically, but that's okay. So the blurb on this is such. Once upon a time there lived, annoyingly, perfect hero Maximilian, a champion with a blinding smile, muscles sculpted by the gods, and an infuriating dedication to all things noble and good. But this isn't his story. Good, because that would be boring. Honor is overrated. This is a story of Cyrus, the kingdom's most feared wrongdoer. Handsome, dastardly, and still relatively young, Cyrus lives for villainy, but even Cyrus has to admit keeping up a fearsome image is a lot of work. So when the golden boy Maximilian offers a deal to fake a rivalry, Cyrus can't resist. Um, so I would say this is absolutely, kind of a queer romance, but also throwing in a fantasy stint to it. This is a debut novel by Amy, so I'm excited to see where this goes. Um, I've read different sapphic ones similar to this. I kind of think this will be a fun twist on, um, the villain who maybe not be as much of a villain as you think they are, and then obviously the hero who might not be quite the hero that you think they are. But then, so it's not maybe not quite enemies to lovers, but kind of this hey, let's pretend to be enemies, and oops, we end up being falling in love too. So looking forward to that. I think this will be a cool palette cleanser, something that'll be fun to read, and I think if anything, this will be perfect for the summer. So take a look at that. Absolutely. So next, Slasher Summer by E.L. Chen, coming out on June 23rd. Absolutely, by the name, you think this one's going to be a bit of a slasher horror book, and it absolutely is. So here's the blurb on this one. In this campy love letter to the slasher films of the 1980s, seven friends reunite for a weekend of fun, only to be hunted down by a cold-blooded killer. But the real horror is not being able to escape who you were in high school. The sleepy town of Cedar Lake Falls is best known as the shooting location of the campy 80s horror flick Slasher. In high school, preppy Patrick, jock Jason, cheerleader Tiffany, stoner Freddie, goth Jennifer, and nerdy Michael had played the cast of Slasher during midnight showings, with Virginal Carey as the final girl, of course. Years later, the friends reunite at the remote cabin where Slasher was filmed. They've changed since high school. Patrick came out, Mikey bulked up, and while Freddie, he's still stoned. And they're looking forward to a weekend to catch up. But when night falls and the masked killer is spotted, the reunion takes a deadly turn. All right, this sounds fun. I'm always up for a slasher story. Stephen Graham Jones is great for that. I love. I always jump in on those kind of stories. So this one sounds like fun. I think you also throw in a little bit of the Breakfast Club, kind of at least as they were in high school. And hey, now what happens to them years later? And then you throw in a slasher to boot and a killer. I think this one's going to be kind of fun. I think it's almost like you're battling two things. Obviously, you're battling the deadly killer, but you're also battling who you were in high school, both for good or bad, right? And for anyone who is still dealing with the trauma of high school, this one could be kind of fun. So looking forward to this one. All right. Next up, also coming out on June 23rd, The Sixth Nick, N-I-K. It's by Daniel Krauss. Now, Daniel Krauss, if you didn't know, his book Angel Down just won the Pulitzer. He also had Whale Fall a couple years ago as well. I loved Whale Fall. Angel Down is sitting on my TBR shelf. I bought it last year when it first came out, because after Whale Fall I was jumping right in on Daniel. And of course, as with many books on your TBR, it's still sitting here. So I absolutely will jump into that and look forward to that one as well. This one I would probably buy right away as well, even if I didn't read it for a few months afterwards. But I'm looking forward to this. So here's what the publisher says. Deep into space, far past Tri-World outposts, beyond range of the lethal Trollbot internet, soars the Sickness, a ship woven from biomatter and capable of reacting to every need of its human crew. Sicilla, a 9-year-old cultist with a brain enhanced by arcane tech known as Nyx, has boarded to investigate the enigma of Pham, a plague-riddled planet that has abruptly gone rogue. The mysterious crew includes a faceless assassin, a beautiful engineer jigsawed by plastic surgery, a peyote-addicted medic, and, most lethal of all, a rugged, non-modded captain with a score to settle with Sicilla. Other dangers abound. A hacked robot begins to believe Sisla as its daughter. The sickness itself is mutating, possibly even pregnant. And the secret of Fam is more horrifying than anyone could have imagined. To survive, Sisla will need to forsake her predetermined fate and embrace the unknown. I'll be honest with you, this was a complete mystery to me. I will be going in cold whenever I do read this. It sounds like an amazingly fun ride with a lot of interesting characters. This is Daniel's first formal foray into sci-fi. I think he's kind of skirted the fantasy horror kind of things before. One of the writings on this and blurbs kind of said that it's Alien meets Ender's Game. So I'm not sure how to read that one. But quite frankly, I am willing to trust Daniel Krauss and see where he takes me. Obviously, his books are great. Let's jump into that one. I will also say Guillermo del Toro and George Romero kind of Krauss was involved with them with The Shape of Water, that movie. So he's absolutely no stranger. And I think if anyone has read Whale Fall, he's no stranger to creating tension, to writing tension, to creating something that's impacts you kind of emotionally. So I feel like this one may not necessarily be quite a romp, but I think it's going to balance that and have some action along with a lot of emotional connection. So that sounds interesting. All right, the next one I'm definitely excited for, Green City Wars by Adrian Tchaikovsky. Comes out June 23rd. Sci-fi. Adrian is amazing. If you've read any of his other books in terms of sci-fi writing, he writes amazingly well with animals and kind of giving them a different perspective and approaching things. From the blurb here, I think this is going to be no different, so I'm excited about this. So, in the solar cities of the future, the humans relax in the sun and the animals work in the shadows. Genetically engineered little helpers, serving humanity unseen, unheard. Meet Scotch, raccoon, private eye, yours for a few buttons as long as the job isn't too illegal, whatever that means. A mouse has gone missing. Normally this wouldn't raise any hackles nor any alarms, but this mouse has something that everyone seems to want, though nobody appears particularly eager to say what that something is. The fee is good, the job seems simple, but nothing is ever simple. So, looking at this, I would say that the main characters are mostly going to be animals, and it's going to be very much maybe a Who Framed Roger Rabbit kind of approach to a story. The humans will be kind of in the background or character actors versus the animals who are all genetically engineered, have some commentary and conversations and approach. So I think this one's going to be fun. I'm excited about this. It's a standalone. It's not part of a series. So I think Green City Wars. Keep an eye out for that one coming out in June. All right, so the last new book in June that I'm going to talk about is called Tillinghast by Clare Cavenagh. This one's kind of a gothic horror, gothic book, so I'm looking forward to that. So here's the blurb. A dark and utterly original literary horror debut. So this is a debut novel, following a priest whose bloodthirsty life has extended far longer than any mere human's and is upended when a stranger comes to town. Stutley Tillinghast lives in a solitary life, ostensibly as the minister of a remote rural parish in Rhode Island. For many decades now, what little human contact he's allowed himself has been brief, frenzied, and bloody, and has always ended in a shallow grave in his cellar. There's a name for what he is, but he prefers not to use it. It is simple enough that he has needs, and when they become unbearable, he fulfills them. Then a girl arrives, searching for him. She has his last name and bears an uncanny resemblance to that woman, awaking memories Tillinghast has long suppressed. She is also sick, very sick, with symptoms Tillinghast recognizes all too well. and only he knows how to cure her. Inspired by the real events of the New England vampire panic of the 19th century, Tillinghast is a novel to sink your teeth into. Um, so obviously this is a vampire book, which sign me up automatically. But I would say that it's also kind of, and it's absolutely going to be a little bit different. Obviously, has a little literary gothic horror to it. Also has a family dynamic and an approach from that perspective. And how does someone who clearly is avoiding contact have to then navigate when someone arrives and throws their world into disarray, right? I think this one sounds really good. I imagine, as with most Gothic books, this is going to take a good amount of setup, and then kind of move on rapidly once things kind of become move on, and especially once the young girl arrives. I think that'll change the story quite a bit. So, but I'm excited about this one. I think this will be good. This might be a good one to read, even whether you save it for October or the fall or not. I think this one's going to be a good one. All right, so moving on to July. Coming out on July 7th, Fabulous Bodies by Chuck Tingle. Now, Chuck Tingle, I think he's Bury Your Gaze was probably one of his most recent novels. Also, Camp Damascus, which I read, and I really enjoyed that one. So this one's another one, a supernatural joyride where Drive meets Beetlejuice, which I'm not sure how to take that one. So here we go. Poppy Stringer was born to be a star, an aspiring fashion influencer by day. Poppy moonlights as a grave robber to make ends meet, wheeling and dealing dead bodies across Palm Springs. When her hero, the flamboyant piano-slamming rock star Eddie Michaels, unexpectedly dies, Poppy gets a call to retrieve his body from the medical examiner's office for a lucrative sum. It could be the last job she'll ever need, if everything goes to plan. But the night's delivery quickly veers off course when Eddie wakes up. Now Poppy must fight for her life as she hopes to survive this blood-soaked joyride of carnage and extravagant entertainment. Yeah, this one sounds fun. I think this one's going to be one of those outrageous, outlandish books that if you buy the bit, you buy the premise, you're along for the ride. But I think it's going to be really interesting. Has a cool premise to it just from the blurb. And I think this one will be. I think Chuck writes, fun, a very kind of biting novel, biting stories, and so I think this one will be just as interesting. So hop on, Fabulous Bodies. All right, here we go. The Brides by Charlotte Krauss, also coming out July 7th. Here's the blurb. Creepy, sumptuous, and incredibly gripping, The Brides is a feminist gothic horror about three women who become the brides of Dracula, and the fourth who manages to escape. 1884, when Mafalda journeys to Budapest to care for her grieving aunt, her secret love Lucy hurries from London to comfort her, with chaperone and lady's maids in tow. But lady's maid Alice, blessed and cursed with the sight, is tormented by terrifying visions. When chaperone Eliza falls prey to a disturbing, wasting illness, the women hope to seek the healing waters of Transylvania. At a nobleman's invitation, they set out for Castle Dracula. In the depths of the forest, miles from civilization, their host reveals his true intentions. A monstrous ambition which will tear the women apart, and not all of them will survive. I think the approach from what I understand is that this is also kind of in a epistolary structure, so very mirrors the original Dracula. I've read other books where it speaks about characters who were what they call the three brides, or the three women in the Dracula story who are in the Dracula Castle Dracula, who Jonathan Harker is tempted with. And so, it's always an interesting tale on how someone takes those three very brief characters in the original novel and then builds them out into something that and gives them a backstory and everything that goes along with that. So I think this is my second vampire book of the summer. absolutely very different, and so I'm looking forward to seeing how well this goes. This one I will say probably could be hit or either really good or could fall flat. This is Charlotte's debut novel, so um, I, I look forward to it. I think this is going to go well, but yeah, absolutely, we shall see. But I'm interested just on the premise alone. And then finally, ending with we started with a memoir. We're going to end with a memoir for new books at least. Push the Wall: My Life, Writing, Drawing, and the Art of Storytelling by Frank Miller. So I think if anyone knows Frank Miller, he's the mind behind the graphic novels Batman, The Dark Knight Returns, Daredevil, 300, Sin City. So this one is, I think, going to be definitely worth flagging for anyone who's either a Frank Miller fan, but also just a memoir fan in general, and wants to learn something about pop culture and art and all the things that go with that. So here's the blurb. Push the Wall is part memoir, part masterclass for budding artists and writers by one of the greatest living creators whose work has influenced pop culture for decades. Miller's mix of autobiographical lessons evokes Patti Smith's Just Kids as it weaves his struggles as a 17-year-old kid fresh from Vermont into a seedy 1970s New York City with his eventual success. Push the Wall chronicles the creation of Miller's most iconic works: Sin City, 300, Ronin, Daredevil, Wolverine, and notably Batman: The Dark Knight Returns, which, alongside Batman Year One, serves as a foundation for all Batman film and adaptations for the past 40 years. Frank Miller says, "This is my way. May it help you find your own." Yeah. So I think, I would say Frank Miller needs no introduction, right? I think this one's going to be super exciting, really interesting to learn how he found his way and opened the doors, whether he burst them open or they opened for him or however he got in there, and kind of built up the reputation and using his skills that he has. So I'm looking forward to that one. Especially coming off of some other memoirs. I'm a sucker for a good memoir as well. So this one will look good. Now I will want to. I'm just going to go back. There is one book, like I said, as honorable mention, that is coming out as in a wide paperback edition. So and so this one is that had already come out. So it's called Headlights by C.J. Lead. I still think, just in looking at that, I wish I had read it in the beginning. So this one I'm looking forward to reading. I've heard good things about this from other people who have read it. So I'm really looking forward to that. So the blurb on this one: every instinct tells him to run. Every memory tells him he can't. Special Agent Daniel Stansfield is ready for a change. Burnt out and defeated by the job, it's his last day with the FBI. But before he can turn in his badge, he's summoned back to Denver, the city he ran from, as it looks like the sadistic killer he failed to stop 4 years ago has returned. Seemingly innocent people are waking up on the side of the highway with no memory of how they got there, wearing the skin of victims they allegedly never met. And they each share one haunting detail: a strand of a stranger's hair is tied around their tongue. Now Daniel is pulled back into the gruesome cycle, and every clue leads him deeper into the shadows of his own past. He will have to confront the ghosts of his traumatic childhood and face what has been haunting him all along, before he and the people he loves become the next victims. Just alone, it's a kind of thriller, horror, serial killer vibes. I think this one is if you can get a chance to grab this one in paperback, go for it. It is supposed to come out at the beginning of June 9th. So in paperback. So keep an eye out for that one. These are all really, really good. And we should add to everyone's continuing towering stack of TBRs. All right. So those are 12 books total, coming out in June and July. like I said, as much as I would love to say I'm going to read all most of these immediately, I'm sure some will sit on my shelf, and I'll get to them, especially once my library has them in. But hey, you know what? I have been known to succumb to peer pressure and get some as well. So we'll see how this goes. But I'm at peace with my TBR. I'm okay with it, and hey, that's why you get to read. It's the joy of it all. Even if you encounter a book that's come out years ago, being able to read one of those for the first time and either see what all the fuss is about or just become part of the story and everyone else who loved it as well. It doesn't matter when you read it as long as you find your way to it at some way, shape, or form, right? So yeah, tell me in the comments what are some of the books you're most excited about in June and July. I would love to hear more about these. Anything you've pre-ordered or anything that you already you're ready to get raring to go, or you're going to be in line on day publish day. So love to hear about that. And thank you again, lucky number 13. Thanks for joining me. Thanks for finding me. Like and subscribe, and look forward to talking to you more in the next one. So until next time, enjoy your reading.